The United States is to expand its missile defense system to counter what it sees as a growing military threat from North Korea. A statement made by the Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel came a week after North Korea's leader threatened to stage preemptive nuclear attacks on the US. Mr. Hagel also announced that the Americans are going to be cancelling the deployment of interceptors in Europe, a key part of the country's European missile defense plan, and that cut will partly fund the new interceptors to be placed in Alaska. Matt Wells reports from Washington.
This was US Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel's first big announcement in the job. The focus of his billion-dollar pledge on Friday about new defensive missile deployments was North Korea. But, almost as an aside, he said that the final phase of the American-led European defense program would be shelved. Those missiles were due to arrive in 9 years' time at the earliest. The former Republican senator said the priority now was to counter what he called the reckless provocation of North Korea's regime.
We will strengthen homeland missile defense by deploying 14 additional ground-based interceptors, GBIs, at Fort Greely, Alaska. That will increase the number of deployed ground-based interceptors from 30 to 44, including the 4 GBIs at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. These additional GBIs will provide a nearly 50% increase in our missile defense capability.
Hagel says the U.S. will deploy 14 additional ground-based interceptors in Alaska in 2017. The country already has 30 such interceptors stationed there and in California. North Korean leaders carried out their third nuclear test in February and launched what is effectively a long-range ballistic missile in December. Hagel says U.S. military commanders will speed up the deployment of another highest-performance X-band radar in Japan. They already have one operating in the country's north in Aomori Prefecture.
The Pentagon is acknowledging that North Korea is becoming more of a global threat because of the speed at which it is developing its missile program and its nuclear weapon program. So how does the military want to respond to that? At the front line, by going to the Pacific Ocean, where the fear is that North Korea, on its best day, might be able to launch a missile that would go all the way out to hit some parts of the United States. What are they going to do about that? First of all, they want more radar support. They want a new base in Japan here to be tracking early on what's happening. They want to beef up missiles in Alaska and California. And of course, they want steady monitoring from ships at sea, from airplanes overhead, and from satellites, all watching to see if North Korea is going to launch at some point our way. How would that work? Well, if North Korea launches a missile, all those early warning systems would send the coordinates of the flight back to these response missiles, which would then fire and go up and try to hit it and take it out. Ideally, they would like to hit it early on or in the middle and at a last resort way over here. But what they want is numerous shots at it so they can stop it. That's really the goal. And they have to have numerous shots because this is all still fairly new technology and it's not all entirely reliable. As I said, we don't know that the North Koreans at this point can really get a missile to go this far, but our ability to intercept it and stop it is also a tricky thing to pull off. Look at the things we would use for this. As a two-stage missile, this is what we would launch out of Alaska or California, and it would release something like this. This is called an exo-atmospheric kill vehicle. It's made by Raytheon. You see it's got those little propulsion units around it there. It also has an infrared guidance system in the nose, and that, when it gets released, locks in on the nuclear warhead in this missile, and it will guide this in to actually smash into that at about 17,000 miles an hour and tear it apart. It does not explode. This is about as big as a refrigerator. It just smashes into it and tears it apart. You can imagine how difficult that is to pull off. But this is the technology that we're trying to perfect so that we can stop the North Korean technology if and when they ever get it perfected and actually can threaten the U.S. mainland.
Barry Pavel is the director of the International Security Program at the Atlantic Council. That's a think tank based in Washington, D.C. And he says there are questions surrounding the reliability of the ground-based missile defense system.
The interceptor that was discussed today, that's called the ground-based interceptor, or GBI, That's a more complex system. There have been many in the U.S. Congress that have questioned, is it ready? And you heard Secretary Hagel say, we're going to do more testing if it's not ready, and I think that might be required because it is a very complex technology and remains to be confidently fielded.